Hello everyone, welcome to the next part of this tutorial. We're going to be drawing the nose in this one, which I have very much been looking forward to. I always find that dog noses are a very satisfying thing to draw, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I've just been reducing the graphite lines again here with my kneadable eraser, and we're going to go straight in with some base layers. So again, starting with the lightest colours and then gradually working through the midtones and then to the darkest colours, as we have done with other things. But the main difference with this is going to be a bit different with texture. We're going to be starting off by trying to keep everything as smooth as possible, and then we can add any like textured details at the end. So I'm going to be starting with light grey. I've got warm grey one here, but whatever light grey you have available will definitely do the trick. So I'm going to be using small circular motions with the pencil and pretty much just covering the whole thing. Do take note that there are shiny areas, so those shiny areas will be staying very light, so I probably won't be applying much more colour than this onto those bits, but hopefully that'll make a bit more sense as I move on to those areas. But yeah, pretty much get everything covered, even the inside of the nostril, that's fine. And just keeping it as consistent as possible. And we're done. And we're just going to build up very gradually. So I'm using a slightly darker grey now. This is warm grey 3. So very similar, small circular motions, but I will be using a little bit more pressure on the darker areas, just to start building up that shadow. And also it means I'm not going to lose where those darker areas are. So as you can see, I'm just marking that line that goes up the centre of the nose first, so that stays there. And then I will fill in the nostrils and then go from there. Of course, the nostrils are going to be quite dark, so I will use a bit more pressure on this bit. And at the bottom of the nostril, you can see there's a bit of a shine, so I'm going to leave that bit clear, so it's just a light grey that's showing through on that bit. Okay, that's those nostrils done. So now we're going to start building up shadow on the rest. So keep paying attention to what areas are darker, and on those darker parts using your small circular motions but with slightly harder pressure. And then as you move towards the lighter sections, gradually decrease your pressure. But try and keep it all gradual. We don't want too many harsh transitions, unless of course it looks like that in the photo. For example, the shine under here, I'd say it is quite a harsh transition, so that's fine. But everywhere else, just try and keep everything nice and gradual, just so it's all as natural as possible. So I'm going to keep doing that until I have filled everywhere that I need to. There's definitely a bit of a shadow that kind of goes along the middle here, so make sure you pay attention to that. And all these shadows are so important to make sure you get the shape of the nose correct. And it's a little bit darker towards the nostril here, but then it gets a bit lighter towards the edge, so decreasing the pressure there. Similar here, kind of round the top of the nostril, it's darker, and then gradually lighter. It is also a little bit darker just at the top here. There we go, that'll do for now. I'm now going to be jumping to quite a bit of a darker colour, just because, as you can see, the nostrils and the line here, they are getting a little bit lost, so I'm just going to increase the shadows on those bits, and I'll use dark sepia for that. So let's just get those done, then we can start adding some other colours. That's that bit, and then just filling in the dark parts of the nostrils. That's that one done, and then the other one, and then we will move on. Perfect. So there's quite a lot of blue going on in this nose. That's quite a clear undertone, and I'd say there's a little bit of that green as well that I was talking about in one of the previous parts. But we'll start off with some blue. I'd say blue is going to be existing on the majority of the nose, so I'm using quite light pressure, small circular motions, and just providing a nice consistent layer of blue initially. Just keep it quite light on the lightest parts of the nose, so kind of this bit here and this bit here, because we do want to keep that shine as light as possible. So literally the tiniest little bit of blue on there. And then I can definitely see a bit of green kind of here. So I'll just add a little bit there, nice and gently. And again, above this nostril here. Trying to see if I can see it anywhere else, maybe a little bit down in these darker parts. Perfect. We now need to get a bit darker, so I'm going to be using Paynes grey. By the way, if you hadn't already figured, all the ones I've used so far in this part are from the FABER-CASTELL POLYCHROMOS range. Paynes grey, good choice because it's got it's kind of a bluey dark grey, so that's going to be perfect. And we're going to be filling in the shadows more, so we are going to be heading towards the actual colour that the nose will be. Right, so I'm going to start with the bottom of the nose here. That bit's all fairly dark, so I'm going to go in with a fairly medium pressure. Better off not doing enough than having to add, so I'm not going to go too crazy. As you can see, we're now starting to build up a nice dark-ish colour. It will probably end up being a lot darker than this, but we just want to build up gradually. And just pay attention to this shine underneath the nostril. Make sure you don't put any of the pencil on top of that bit, because we want to keep that bit nice and light. And I'm keeping it with a similar pressure as I go around the top of the nostril, because that bit is also a bit darker. But then as I move away from that, I am gradually decreasing the pressure. Let's get back over here. So again, medium pressure, watching out for the shiny bits. And we'll go on to the other side. Same again. There is a shiny section there, so we'll just be careful of that. And we can use this colour to deepen this little shadow along here again. So it's mainly dark kind of here in the centre, and then it gradually gradually gets lighter as you move to the right. So that's what we'll focus on initially. Like so. I'm going to keep this bit here quite light, so we've got plenty of contrast there. And then I'd say we need a little bit more of this over here. And then we will fill in this darker bit up here. And then one more little shadow here on the inside of this nostril, gradually decreasing the pressure as we move out to the edge. A little bit more up here. Perfect. So it's still very early days at the moment, so don't get too excited. The next step is we are going to be doing some blending. So I'm going to be using two colours to blend. Firstly, I'm going to be using this white, and that will be to blend the lightest parts so that it doesn't get too dark. And then the rest, I'm going to give it a go with the warm grey one, but if it looks like it's going to make it a bit too light, I might try using the warm grey 3. So keep your mind open. We'll see what happens, but we'll start off with the bits I want to use the white pencil on. So it's mainly going to be the areas around the top of the nose and also the shines underneath the nostrils. And we're going to be using small circular motions again, but with harder pressure to try and squash down the layers we've done so far. Make it nice and smooth. Hopefully you can see already that this bit is becoming smooth. You're not seeing so much texture where the friction, not the friction, I can't even talk today, the tooth of the paper is showing through. So a little bit more over here. And when I move towards an area where I don't think I'm going to be wanting to use the white to blend, I'm gradually decreasing the pressure, just so that when I use a darker colour to blend, there can be a bit of a crossover. To be fair, most of the top portion of the nose I am using the white. And I will just down the inside of this bit here and here. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go straight for the warm grey 3. I think the warm grey 1 is going to be too light. But again, harder pressure. As we are getting more pencil pigment on the paper, we want to be paying attention a bit more to the outside of the nose. Make sure you're not too scribbly, making the edges too messy. We want it to be nice and crisp on the edge. And this grey will go a little bit closer to the nostril here. That's it. Again, focusing on the outline of the nose here. And as I move towards the lighter part, just decreasing the pressure a little bit as I work my way up to it. Now we'll work on this little bit here to the left of the nostril. Fairly hard pressure directly next to the nostril, but then gradually decreasing as we move away. You may notice the dark bits like the nostrils and the line here are starting to disappear again, so our next step will be increasing the contrast further on that bit. Nice gentle pressure here just so we can get a nice merge between the white pencil blending and the grey pencil blending. More pressure in here where it's darker. Perfect. So it's not fully blended everywhere, but it is mostly blended out now. But we are going to go back in with dark sepia to darken those darkest areas again. Same as before. You will probably start to notice it gliding along the paper a bit more now because we've got more layers down. And filling in the nostril again, just make sure it is the right shape. Pay attention to your reference photo. And I am just gradually decreasing the pressure a little bit right on the edge of the nostril, so we've got a nice soft shadow coming out. And we can take advantage of this nice crisp shadow under here. That's going to be quite satisfying. The more contrast we have around here, the better. Really going to help make the nose pop. I'm using very light pressure now, almost just tickling a little bit of this darker colour down onto the highlighted bit. Just want to be very careful here. There we go, that's looking a lot better. Same on the other nostril. Harder pressure initially. Make sure you're getting the shape right. Getting there, just a little bit more darkness. And just tickling the colour onto the highlight a little bit. Perfect. So that move alone there, just increasing those shadows, has just brought the nose to life a little bit more. Time to darken things up again, so we'll go back in with the Paynes grey just to make sure we're getting the correct blue tones in there. So let's start with the edge. Let's get a bit more serious now about the outline of the nose. So I'm using fairly hard pressure on the edge here. Following it around. And then as we move away from that edge, keeping the pressure fairly hard initially, but then I'm gradually decreasing it as I move away. Had a bit of a line up here, just need to add a bit more around it. I'm just working my way up the centre, just fairly gently. I don't want it to be too dark. And a little bit next to the highlight. And I'm just going to add a little bit into this inner shadow as well where the nostril is, just to get a bit more blue in there. Especially as we come out of the shadow around the top of the nostril here. Probably using quite a medium pressure at the moment. And then it can come around and meet the bit we've already done. And gradually working out towards the edge, very gently. And I'm going to add a bit more into this shadow here in the crease. There we go. Now same on the other side. Let's get the outline down nicely first. Keeping the hard pressure initially as we move away, but then gradually decreasing the pressure. Small circular motions, trying to keep it all as smooth as possible. Work it into this little shadow at the top here. And we need a little bit more around to the left, looking a little bit light still. And some next to the nostril down here. Okay, good. We definitely got the overall shape sorted, although in fact I'm just going to add a little bit more into this shadow here. I need a little bit more up here as well. Okay, just having a little look, just making sure I'm happy. I do think some bits could be a little bit more blue, so I'm going to go back in with this light blue here, light ultramarine. And I'm going to be using a bit more pressure than I did earlier, probably like a medium pressure, If in doubt though, go with light pressure and you can always add more. And this is almost going to help blend some layers a little bit further. I am going to be using the white pencil again shortly as well, just to blend the highlighted areas a little more. But the bits that aren't going to be too highlighted, you can be a bit more bold with when it comes to putting down these colours. Just make the highlight a bit bluer though. Okay, all good. Going in with the white, CARAN Luminance. Let's blend together all of this bit here. The beauty of the Luminance pencils is how soft they are, so they blend really nicely. It's all looking so much smoother now. Let's just get these highlights underneath the nostril a bit smoother as well. And this white pencil is going to keep them nice and light. Okay, this is where we start really getting serious, when we start using the black pencil. I'm just going to straighten the camera a little bit. There we go. Well, straightish. So we're going to be making the darkest shadows as dark as possible with this. Just really finish shaping the nose, making sure we're happy with how it looks three-dimensionally. And then we're also going to use a black pencil to apply texture to the nose with like the little lines that you can see. So let's first just get the shadow sorted out, make sure we're happy with the shape first. So let's get this going all the way down. Like so. Then the nostrils. Just making them as dark as possible really, but be careful, don't go too hard with your pressure because there's already been quite a lot of pigment put down on these bits. So you don't want to overwork the paper and cause problems there. Depends on what paper you're using. I mean, if you're using the Fabriano paper like I am, it's quite robust. But if you're using especially a thinner paper, it might start to almost tear up a little bit on the top layers, which you do not want. Okay, making this shadow nice and dark again, nice and crisp. And then gradually decreasing the pressure a little bit as I move away, tickling that black into the highlight, like so. Onto the other nostril. Fairly hard pressure. And I've just noticed you can kind of see the edge of the nostril come down a little bit beyond where the highlight is, so that's why I've just flicked a little bit of a line down there. Then back to the shadow, tickling it slightly into the highlight. It kind of goes over to the right a little bit at the top. Perfect. And while we're on the nostrils, we'll actually start to bring the shadows out a little bit. Might as well continue working on this section. So very similar to what I was doing with the Paynes grey before, but just using the black very gently to continue any shadows that we'd already started building but that needed to be a little bit darker. Now bear in mind when we go in with the texture and those lines, that's going to kind of further darken some bits, so we're not going to go too much. In fact, it will probably look like we haven't gone far enough, but it should all come together once we've added that texture in there. Okay, avoiding the highlights, gently going down the middle. Just want to overall deepen this area. It just wants to be darker all over basically. Fairly hard pressure on the edge, on the outline of the nose. And then decreasing the pressure as we move away. But I've still definitely got like a medium pressure going here. Also, sorry if you can hear my tummy rumbling. Okay, now onto the other nostril. It's actually quite dark around the edge, so small circular motions fairly gently. And then onto the centre of the nose. And there is a little bit of a highlight right next to the nostril here, so just make sure you leave some light bit along that section. And just continuing to fill in the area with the black. Harder pressure right at the edge. Bring that harder pressure into the inner part of the nose a little bit, only slightly. And we're going to very gently work it up into this shadow towards the top here. Very, very gently, like so. And then a little tiny bit up onto this section. I'm literally just letting the tip of the pencil just touch the paper. I'm not pressing down at all, really. Okay, we could do with just applying a little bit more around the edges here. Hopefully you can see where it's a little bit darker around the edge. I do just need to blend that out a little bit more though. Let's use warm grey 1. I just think white's going to be a bit light, but warm grey 3 is going to be a bit dark. There we go, maybe add, oh, holding my pencil the wrong way, that doesn't help. Add a little bit more black there. Over the top. Okay, I think that's looking all right. Do just need to make the outline here a little bit more structured. It actually kind of goes out a little bit more than we think. So I'll draw that. And then I'll use the warm grey 1 with harder pressure just to blend that out. Okay, I'm just going to do final little bit of blending with Paynes Grey, just on these shadows here. I'm going to use a little bit more pressure. Basically, whenever you are blending a section, you just as long as it's a lighter colour you're using. How much lighter kind of depends on the situation, but here we can get away with the shadows being a bit darker, so that's why we're using quite a dark colour to do the blending. Just need to make sure it is getting a little bit, can you see how it's getting a little bit funny up here? Don't panic if that happens. It's fine. Basically, this white pencil is going to be our saviour here, hopefully, because it's such a soft pencil. Just go for another little blending session over the top. And it should, hopefully, bring it back together. It might just be a little bit lighter than you need, but actually I think that's all turned out quite nicely. And I can always add a little bit more of the Paynes grey again, very gently, if I need to darken it at all. So it's time to start going in with the texture. So I have sharpened my black pencil because that is what we're going to be using. Now, if you look at the reference photo closely, we've basically got lots of little lines. I'll try and do a bit of an example. Let's start here. If it'll actually show up. So little lines like that. And when they're all linked together, it will almost give the impression of white dots on the nose. See what I mean? But we're basically going to try and get as many of those on there as possible where required. And it will allow the previous layers we've done to show through between those lines, which is just what we want. So let's move that down towards the nostril. Now, when it comes to this, up to you how much you stick to the reference photo. I tend to not bother sticking to it too much. I'll just make sure it's looking roughly like what we've got on there. Because otherwise, if you try and make it exact, you're going to be here all day, as long as you've got the gist of it. It's one of those details. It's an important detail to have to help the nose look real, but it doesn't need to be line for line. It will look a little bit funny to begin with, but hopefully as we proceed, it will start to look like it's in the right place. It just looks a bit out of place at the moment. On the lighter parts of the nose, where it's more shiny, just use slightly lighter pressure just to keep the lines a bit paler. Hopefully the shadows that we've already put down will do the job for us of giving the correct shape and everything. But if at the end anything doesn't look quite right, we can always deepen shadows in places if it's required. But we'll just see how we get on for now. Just try and keep them all similar size, these shapes. And then especially as we move off to the left here, if you look at the reference, you can see the lines almost become non-existent. You can just about see them. So as we move over there, just very light pressure on the pencil, just making the tiniest little indentations. Just almost hinting at a bit of texture. quite similar along the top here. It's quite a light part, so just very gentle. Just going to merge that into this black bit at the top a little bit more. I do just want to blend that slightly. I know it's going off the topic a little bit. There we go. Yeah, I just went over it with a bit more pressure on with the warm grey one, just to smoothen it out a little bit. Okay, let's continue with the shapes. Just don't rush. Take your time. Can drive you a little bit mad after a while, but as long as you're patient, you should be okay. And you may find you have like the odd darker lines. It's quite good just to add a bit of variation, slightly darken some of the lines. This is quite an important area here, the bit where it kind of dips into the shadow. And again, the lines almost become non-existent as we move towards the right hand side here. So just very gentle pressure on any lines that you do. We could do with some slightly darker lines around this bit where it's a deeper shadow. I'm just going to redo some of this line here just so that it can kind of naturally work up into it. And then as you work downwards, they're not so much like little circular shapes, they're more just lines. They kind of almost think of them as deep wrinkles. Kind of just move out of this central line here. Same on the other side. I kind of keep the direction of the lines a bit more random as they come out of here. Then there will be some coming like out of the nostril this way. Just nice and gently over the highlighted bits. And most importantly, try and make the lines follow the shape of the nose. Like here I'm kind of keeping them quite curved, and that will help with the overall 3D effect. Just going to make this central line a little bit deeper on this bit. Okay, we do need to make some of these lines a little bit darker on these shapes. So just don't be afraid to go back over any if you notice some could be a bit darker. I do need to sort out this bit here. This one there's got a little bit messy. I'm just going to use this white pencil, see if I can blend it out slightly, soften it down. I could always go back over it if I need to, although actually I think that's kind of made it how I want it to be. Just darken a few of the surrounding ones. That bit's gone a little bit harsh. There we go. It's a little bit better. Still got quite a way to go with these, so just keep persevering. And as we come out of this nostril here, the lines are going to be quite a bit darker. Curved lines as they come out. It is almost hard to kind of describe what I'm doing now. Like I kind of told you the general gist of what's going on, but it is very much going to be almost experimenting with pressures and techniques and just seeing what works here for you. I am just going to deepen the shadow here a little bit for this nostril. It's got a little bit lost in there. Especially underneath the crease here. I will also add a little bit more darkness on this one. Okay, so that is pretty much the whole nose covered with the dots. That last bit did actually seem to go a little bit quicker than I thought. But I would say this shadow here still needs to look a little bit deeper, so I'm just going to very gently colour over it a little bit just to make it a bit darker. So to just make things pop a little bit more, I'm going to increase the highlights and make them even lighter on some bits. And to do that, I'm going to be using this slice tool here. So basically, when you're looking at almost the dots on the nose, you want to look out for any that jump out at you and are looking extra light. I just did a little experimental one here. So just very tiny little scratches just to remove some of the pencil pigment. And keeping within the lines that you have created. And it's just going to give the nose more of a shine, which is just what we want, because we're kind of there with all the values and everything. Everything looks like it's in proportion and it's looking real, but there could just be a little bit more to it. So hopefully this is going to create that look for us. It's just almost a little subtle glisten of the nose that we want to produce. So we don't need to go too hardcore with it. The ones nearer this dip here I'm going to be doing more so that that bit looks extra shiny. And then as I move away, I'll just do like a little tiny bit. So it gradually gets less and less, if that makes sense. And it's very tiny scrapes I'm doing. It's almost like I'm just picking at the paper here. Just enough to be able to pick up any pencil. And we'll use it to kind of create highlights on some of the lines in here. Basically, it's going to work wonders on just adding these final details. Doing a few down here as well, just to add a little bit of extra shine on this bit. And some at the top. And a few around here as well, just very gently, because we want to keep this shadow in here a little bit darker. So I might even just scrape a little bit, but literally the blade is just about touching the paper, just to get a little bit off. I think this technique has saved the nose. I was about to say saved the drawing, but that's a bit dramatic. But I was thinking it was looking a bit, it just needed this extra boost. So I'm glad this is working. And it's all quite shiny going around this nostril. So we'll continue to scrape a little bit away around there, just to make some nice shiny bits, nice and pale. Perfect. And we can even use it on these highlights down here, just to make a couple of lighter bits. Perfect. So just finishing touches now. I do feel there are a couple of bits that could just be slightly darker, so I'm just going to gently, using Paynes grey, just to have a little bit of a blue undertone to what I'm doing here. Just darkening this bit ever so slightly. Now, how many finishing touches you need to do very much depends on how it's gone for you. If you're happy with how everything is already, you might not need to do anything. I do want to make this bit here a bit darker. I'm going to use black here because it's in the darkest shadow. And on some bits, the nose, where the nose meets the hairs, at the moment it looks like the nose has just been kind of plonked on and it's not connected in any way. So we're going to do a few black lines coming out of the nose to make it look like it's almost within the hairs. Pretty much all the way down. And definitely need more of that on this side. A little bit over here, just gently. There we go. And I do think we could do with a little bit more shaping around the top, so very gentle black shading at the top here. And I'll probably blend it in with the warm grey one. Slightly harder pressure, just blending it all together. Perfect. Just having a final little look, just making sure I'm happy. Okay, just a couple of little things. I think the nostril can come up a little bit higher here, bring the shadow a bit higher. And I may well get to the end of the entire drawing and think that some things might need to be added, so always be open-minded to altering things a little bit, even once you're at the end of the whole thing. But I think for now, that is all good. So that's that part complete. The next part we're going to do is the ears. So lovely curly spaniel ears, which I know can be challenging, but it helps that it's a dark coloured fur, so that's going to make it a little bit easier than if it was white or a very pale coloured animal. So that'll be the next thing, and then after that it will just be the chest area and the collar, so not too much longer to go. But head over onto the next section when you're ready.